The stars had never seemed so close, yet so threatening. Captain Wu Park stood on the observation deck of Mars Colony 7, watching the massive alien ships drift into orbit around Earth. They were beautiful in a way that made his stomach turn. Sleek, silver vessels that seemed to bend light around their hulls. Humanity's best warships looked like children's toys next to them. "They're here for the negotiations," Commander Lee said, stepping beside him. She held a data tablet, her face tight with worry. "The Galactic Council sent their terms this morning." Wu didn't take his eyes off the alien fleet. He had spent 20 years in the Korean Special Forces, fighting in wars that most people wanted to forget. The resource wars had nearly destroyed Earth. Cities burned. Millions died. He had seen the worst that humans could do to each other. When it finally ended, he retired to Mars, hoping to leave the violence behind. "What do they want?" he asked. Scrolled through the tablet. "Everything. Mars, Europa, Titan, all our mining colonies. They call it a membership fee for joining the Galactic Council." She paused. "The civilian government is considering it." Wu's jaw tightened. He had fought too hard for humanity's future to watch politicians give it away. "And if we refuse?" "They didn't say. But Ambassador made it clear they think we're weak. During the first meeting, he laughed when our generals mentioned Earth's military history. He said we're just primitive brawlers who got lucky with warp technology." On Earth, the negotiations continued. Colonel Minyu sat in the back of the conference room, his face expressionless as the ambassador spoke. Was tall and thin, with skin that shimmered like oil on water. He moved with the confidence of someone who had never lost a fight. "Your species shows promise," said, his voice translated through a device on his chest. "But you must understand your place. The galaxy is vast and dangerous. You need our protection." The Earth president, a nervous man named Director, nodded eagerly. "We appreciate the Council's generosity. What exactly would this protection entail?" "First, you surrender your outer colonies. They are too valuable to waste on such a young species. Second, you provide soldiers for our peacekeeping forces. Third, you open your markets to Council trade." Smiled, showing too many teeth. "These are standard terms. Every new species agrees." Minyu had heard enough. He stood, his chair scraping against the floor. "And if we don't agree?" A's smile didn't fade. "Then we will be forced to pacify you, for your own good, of course. Uncontrolled species often destroy themselves. We prevent such tragedies." "Pacify," Minyu repeated. The word tasted like blood. He had heard similar words before, right before the Siberian campaign, right before he watched his entire battalion die in the snow. "You mean conquer." "Such an ugly word," said. "We prefer to think of it as guidance. You see, we have studied your species. We watched your cities, your schools, your festivals. You are soft, comfortable. Your people cry over small problems. They complain about minor discomforts. Your soldiers," he paused as if searching for the right word. "They play at war. They have never faced real combat." The room fell silent. Minyu felt something cold settle in his chest. These aliens had watched humanity, but they had watched the wrong parts. They saw the peace that came after the wars. They saw people who had finally stopped fighting each other. They thought that meant humans didn't know how to fight at all. "You have 30 days to decide," announced. "After that, we will take what we need. It will be easier if you cooperate." Back on Mars, Wu gathered his people. The veteran settlement was small, just a few hundred souls, but every one of them had fought in Earth's wars. They had survived when survival seemed impossible. They knew things that the aliens couldn't understand. "They think we're weak," Wu said, standing before the crowd in the colony's main hall. "They watched our children playing and thought that's all we are. They don't know about the resource wars. They don't know about the Pacific Theater. They don't know what we had to become to survive." Major stood near the back, his arms crossed. He had lost everyone he loved in the guerrilla campaigns, his wife, his children, his entire unit. He had kept fighting anyway because stopping meant death. "What are you suggesting?" he he asked. I'm suggesting we remind them, Wu said. The civilian government might surrender. They're scared and I don't blame them, but we swore an oath. We promised to defend humanity. That oath doesn't expire. Dr. Han raised her hand. She had been a combat medic during the worst years, performing surgery in bombed-out buildings while shells fell around her. You're talking about fighting them. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours. Technology didn't save the armies I fought, said quietly. We beat soldiers with better guns, better armor, better everything. We beat them because we wanted to live more than they wanted to win. Sergeant Bay laughed, a harsh sound. He was missing 2 fingers from a demolition accident, but he was still the best explosives expert in human space. So what's the plan? We have 30 days and a bunch of old soldiers with outdated equipment. Wu pulled up a hologram of the solar system. We gather everyone we can, every veteran, every soldier, everyone who knows how to fight. We take whatever ships and weapons we can find, and we show these aliens what happens when you mistake peace for weakness. Stepped forward. She had been quiet until now, torn between her duty to the government and her loyalty to her fellow soldiers. If we do this, we'll be defying Earth's government. They might call us traitors. Let them, Minyu's voice crackled over the comm system from Earth. He had heard everything. I'd rather be a living traitor than a dead slave. I'm in, and I'm bringing everyone I can find. Across human space, the call went out. Old soldiers heard and remembered. They remembered what they had fought for. They remembered what they had lost. They remembered that humans didn't survive by being the strongest they survived by refusing to quit. The fleet hung in orbit, confident and unchallenged. Ambassador prepared his victory speech. In 30 days, humanity would kneel. He had no idea what was coming. In the asteroid belt, Wu watched his network grow. Hundreds became thousands. Old warships were pulled from mothballs. Mining equipment was converted to weapons. Every day more veterans arrived, their eyes hard with purpose. They had fought humans and won. Now they would fight aliens. The galaxy was about to learn a lesson it would never forget. The asteroid belt had become a hive of activity. Ships arrived every day, carrying veterans from every corner of human space. Some came in old military transports. Others hitchhiked on civilian cargo ships. A few flew alone in personal craft held together with spare parts and prayer. They all came for the same reason. They remembered what it meant to fight for survival. Wu stood in the command center of their hidden base, a converted mining station deep inside a hollowed-out asteroid. The room was crowded with faces he hadn't seen in years. Some were friends. Some were former enemies from different sides of Earth's wars. None of that mattered now. We have 3,000 fighters, Major reported, studying a tactical display. Most are veterans of the resource wars. We also have pilots, engineers, medics, and demolition experts. Equipment is another story. We have maybe 50 combat-ready ships and enough weapons for half our people. Then we make do with what we have, Wu said. We always have. Sergeant Bay grinned from his workstation. He was surrounded by mining explosives, taking them apart and putting them back together in new and dangerous ways. I can turn these civilian charges into something special. Won't be pretty, but it'll make a hell of a bang. Dr. Han had set up a medical bay in one of the larger chambers. She moved between beds, checking equipment and training younger medics. She knew they would need every bed before this was over. She had seen enough wars to know how many people would be hurt, how many wouldn't make it home. We need to talk about the government, Commander Lee said quietly, pulling Wu aside. I received a classified message this morning. Earth's civilian leadership has agreed to terms. They're planning to announce the surrender in 2 weeks. Wu felt something cold settle in his stomach. They're really going to give up everything we fought for. They're scared. They showed them footage of their military conquests. Entire civilizations that resisted were wiped out in days. His voice was barely a whisper. Can you blame them? Yes, Colonel Minu said, walking up to join them. He looked worse than the last time Wu had seen him, thinner and paler. The scars on his face seemed deeper. I can blame them for forgetting what we are. We didn't beat the resource wars by surrendering. We didn't survive the Pacific Theater by giving up. We bled and died and kept fighting until there was nobody left to fight. Nodded slowly. During the Siberian campaign, my unit was surrounded for 3 months. No supplies, no reinforcements, just snow and enemies. We ate tree bark. We burned our own equipment for warmth. 60 people went in, 7 came out. He looked at each of them. We didn't survive because we were strong. We survived because we were too stubborn to die. That's what humans are. That's what these aliens don't understand. Lieutenant Shin entered the command center, her flight suit still dirty from a training run. She was young, barely 30, but she had been flying combat missions since she was 18. The new pilots are getting better. They're learning the tactics, but she hesitated. Some of them are asking why we're doing this. Why not just accept the offer and live in peace? The room fell silent. It was a fair question. Most people wanted peace. They wanted safety. The idea of fighting an advanced alien race seemed insane. Spoke up from his corner. I had a daughter once. She died in the resource wars. Shelling took out her school. His voice was flat, emotionless. He had told this story many times. After she died, I thought about giving up, just walking away. But then I realized something. If I gave up, she died for nothing. Every person who died in those wars, they died so humanity could have a future. Our future. Not some alien empire's future. We're not fighting because we want to, Wu said, raising his voice so everyone could hear. We're fighting because if we don't, humanity becomes a footnote in galactic history. We become slaves wearing nice chains. Our children will grow up bowing to alien masters, and they'll never know what we gave up to save them from that fate. Commander arrived later that day with unexpected news. He had spent his career in submarine warfare, hunting enemy vessels in Earth's oceans. Now he looked at space the same way he had looked at the deep sea, as a place to hide and strike from the shadows. I commandeered 6 mining vessels, he announced. Big, slow, ugly things, but they have powerful engines and thick hulls. With some modifications, we can turn them into space submarines, hit and run attacks, disappear into the asteroid field before they can respond. That's practically piracy, said, though she didn't sound disapproving. It's war, replied, or it will be soon. The fleet is moving into position around Mars. They're preparing for their pacification operation. We have maybe 10 days before they start. Wu gathered his senior officers for a war council. They spread out maps and tactical displays, planning battles they knew they couldn't win through conventional means. They would have to be creative, ruthless, willing to do things that would make the history books uncomfortable. The fight like most advanced civilizations, explained, pulling up footage of their previous conquests. Fleet battles, honorable engagements. They establish dominance through overwhelming firepower, then accept surrender. They're not used to enemies who don't follow the rules. Then we don't follow the rules, Minu said. Guerrilla warfare, ambushes, traps. We make them bleed for every meter of space. We make them afraid to advance. We make them wish they had never heard of humanity. Looked at the casualty projections and felt sick. A lot of people are going to die. A lot of people always die, said softly. The question is whether they die free or on their knees. As the days passed, the hidden base transformed. Veterans trained new fighters in tactics born from desperation. Engineers worked around the clock, turning civilian equipment into weapons of war. Medical teams prepared for the worst. Everyone knew what was coming. On Earth, the government prepared to announce humanity's surrender. They had made their choice, prioritizing immediate survival over long-term freedom. Perhaps they were right. Perhaps fighting was madness. But in the asteroid belt, 3,000 veterans made a different choice. They chose to fight, not because they thought they would win, not because they were heroes. They fought because it was all they knew how to do, because giving up felt like dying and they weren't ready to die yet. Wu stood alone on the observation deck looking at the stars. Somewhere out there, the fleet was preparing to crush humanity. They had better weapons, better ships, better technology. They had conquered dozens of civilizations. But they had never fought humans before. They had never faced an enemy that had spent centuries fighting itself. They thought humans were weak because they had finally found peace. They were about to learn the difference between choosing peace and being forced into submission. The storm was gathering, soon it would break. The fleet approached Mars with absolute confidence. 300 warships, each one larger and more powerful than anything humanity had ever built. They moved in perfect formation, their silver hulls gleaming in the sunlight. Ambassador stood on the bridge of the flagship, watching Mars grow larger on the "Open a communication channel," he ordered. "Let's give these humans one final chance to surrender peacefully." The communications officer tried, then tried again. "Sir, there's no response. All Mars colonies have gone silent." A frowned. This was unexpected. Usually, prey species begged for mercy at this point. The silence felt wrong somehow, like the quiet before a storm. "Prepare landing forces. If they want to be difficult, we'll drag them out of their holes." In the asteroid belt, Wu watched the fleet on long-range sensors. His heart pounded, but his hands were steady. He had felt this way before, right before every major battle of his life. Fear and determination mixed together until you couldn't tell them apart. "All units, this is command," he said into the comm system. "Remember, we're not trying to destroy their fleet. We're trying to hurt them, make them bleed, make them angry, make them realize they're not fighting civilians anymore. You're up first." Lieutenant Shin sat in the cockpit of her fighter. One of only 12 humanity had managed to make combat ready. Her squadron was spread out across the asteroid belt, hidden among the rocks. Behind her, strapped into the passenger seat, was enough explosive to vaporize a small moon. "This is insane," her co-pilot whispered. "Probably," agreed. "But someone has to go first, might as well be us." She punched the engines and her fighter shot out from behind the asteroid. The sensors picked her up immediately. She was alone, tiny, insignificant. They probably thought she was running away or trying to surrender. They were wrong. Pushed her fighter to maximum speed, heading straight for the flagship. Alarms blared in her cockpit as the alien ship's defensive systems locked onto her. Energy weapons fired, missing by meters. She jinked left, then right, using every trick she had learned in Earth's wars. "They're launching interceptors," her co-pilot reported. 6 ships closing fast." "Good, keep their attention on us." The flagship grew larger, filling her entire. She could see the shimmer of its shields, the weapons ports tracking her movement. At the last second, she armed the explosives and ejected from the fighter. The small escape pod tumbled away as her fighter, carrying its deadly payload, slammed into the flagship's shield at full speed. The explosion was massive, a miniature sun blooming in the darkness of space. The shields flickered and failed. Secondary explosions rippled across the flagship's hull. On the bridge, staggered as the ship shook. "What happened? What was that?" "A suicide attack, sir," his tactical officer reported, his voice shocked. "One of their fighters deliberately crashed into us. Our shields are down. Hull breaches on decks 7 through 12. "A suicide attack," I couldn't believe it. "They sacrificed themselves for what? They barely damaged us." But the damage was done. The shield failure lasted only seconds, but it was enough. Commander watched from his converted mining vessel, hidden deep in the asteroid field. The moment the flagship's shields dropped, he gave the order. "All submarines fire missiles, full spread, then get out of there." 6 mining vessels revealed themselves, their hulls opening to release crude but effective missiles. Dozens of them streaked toward the fleet, targeting the damaged flagship and the ships closest to it. The aliens scrambled to respond, but they were too slow. Half the missiles made it through. Explosions bloomed across the formation. The flagship took 3 direct hits, its engines going dark. 2 escort cruisers simply vanished in balls of fire. Before the aliens could retaliate, submarines disappeared back into the asteroid field, their engines cold and silent. "They're using guerrilla tactics," the tactical officer shouted. "Hiding among the asteroids, striking and retreating. This isn't how space combat works." "Then teach them the proper way," a screamed. "Send in assault teams, clear out those asteroids." That was exactly what Wu had been waiting for. As troop transports moved toward the larger asteroids, including the one containing the hidden human base, they flew directly into a trap. Sergeant Bay had spent days mining the approach routes with improvised explosives. "Fire in the hole," he said calmly, and pressed the detonator. Space lit up with explosions, not big ones like Satak, but dozens of smaller blasts that filled the void with shrapnel and debris. Transports that were designed for planetary assaults found themselves shredded by high-velocity rocks. Some made it through, but they were damaged and disoriented. On Mars, Colonel Menu waited with his ground forces. They had sent landing parties to the major colonies, expecting to find frightened civilians. Instead, they found empty buildings and silent streets. Menu smiled from his position in the old mining tunnels beneath the surface. "They're in the kill zone," his forward observer reported. 300 soldiers moving down Main Street. "Wait for it," Menu said. He had learned patience in the Siberian campaign, freezing in the snow while enemy patrols walked past his position. "Wait until they're all inside." The soldiers moved cautiously through the abandoned colony. Their armor was impressive, their weapons advanced. But they had never fought in an urban environment against an enemy that knew every corner, every building, every weakness. "Now," Menu ordered. The buildings exploded. Not all of them, just the ones team had rigged with shaped charges. Debris rained down on the soldiers. Tunnels opened in the street, and human fighters poured out, firing weapons at close range. It was brutal, chaotic, and nothing like the organized warfare that we're used to. Major led a strike team through the colony's service tunnels. They hit them from behind, using the terrain they knew by heart. It was guerrilla warfare at its finest. Strike hard, disappear, strike again from a different direction. The aliens had superior firepower, but they were fighting blind. Dr. Han worked frantically in the medical bay as casualties began arriving. Burns, broken bones, shrapnel wounds. She had seen it all before during Earth's wars, but it never got easier. Each wounded soldier was someone's friend, someone's family. "We need more supplies," a medic shouted. "Use what we have," replied. "Make it last. This is just the beginning." In orbit, the fleet regrouped. They had lost ships. They had lost soldiers. Ambassador stared at the casualty reports, unable to process what had happened. They were supposed to be the superior force. These humans were supposed to be weak, scared, easy to control. Instead, they had fought like demons. They had sacrificed themselves without hesitation. They had used tactics that no civilized species would consider. They had turned their own colonies into death traps. "Pull back," I ordered quietly. "Regroup at the outer system. We need to reassess." "Sir," his tactical officer looked confused. "We're retreating." "We're not retreating," I said firmly, though his hands shook. "We're regrouping. There's a difference." But everyone on the bridge knew the truth. The mighty fleet, conquerors of a dozen civilizations, had just been bloodied by a species they had dismissed as primitive. As the fleet, I sent a message to the Galactic Council. "We underestimated them," he reported. "These humans, they don't fight like any species I've ever encountered. They fight like they have nothing to lose, because they don't. They're willing to die, all of them." On Mars, in the hidden base, the humans counted their losses. Had survived her ejection, but 50 others hadn't made it back. The price of first blood had been high. But they had done it. They had hurt the aliens. They had proven that humanity could fight back. Wu stood before his weary soldiers. They'll come back stronger, angrier. This was just round one, but now they know we're not weak, we're not helpless, we're human, and we don't surrender. The war had truly begun. 3 months had passed since the first battle. The war had spread across the entire solar system like a disease. Every colony, every station, every asteroid belt had become a battlefield. They kept coming, wave after wave, and humanity kept fighting back. General Song had come out of retirement to coordinate the human resistance. She was 70 years old, with gray hair and eyes that had seen too many wars. She stood in the command center, studying tactical displays that showed a grim picture. The aliens were learning, adapting, getting better at fighting humans. "We've lost the outer colonies," she reported to Wu during a video call. "Europa, Titan, and Ganymede are under control. They're being more careful now. They scan for traps. They don't bunch up. They're learning from their mistakes." Wu looked exhausted. Dark circles under his eyes showed he hadn't slept properly in weeks. "How many people did we evacuate?" "Most of them, maybe 80%. Paused. "The ones who stayed behind are fighting a guerrilla campaign, slowing the down, making them pay for every meter of ground." Major had turned into something almost inhuman. He moved between battlefields like a ghost, always appearing where the fighting was worst. His tactics had become legendary among both humans and aliens. He didn't fight to win battles. He fought to make the enemy scared. "They need to fear us more than they hate us," he explained to a group of new recruits. These were young people, barely 20, who had never fought before the war. Now they were learning to kill. "Every time they advance, we make them bleed. Every time they rest, we attack. Every time they think they're safe, we prove them wrong. Eventually, they'll decide we're not worth the cost." Captain Park was running a psychological warfare campaign that was driving the crazy. She broadcast footage of Earth's wars across every frequency the aliens could receive. Battles from the Resource Wars, the Pacific Theater, the Siberian Campaign. Humans fighting each other with a savagery that made the uncomfortable. "Let them see what we did to ourselves," she said. "Let them understand that if we're willing to do that to our own species, imagine what we'll do to them." The broadcasts were working. Reports from the Galactic Council showed that other alien species were watching with growing concern. Some began questioning whether conquering humanity was wise. A few even suggested negotiating peace. Ambassador had been replaced. His failure at Mars had cost him everything. The new commander was named L, and he was nothing like his predecessor. Where I had been arrogant, L was ruthless. Where I had underestimated humans, L studied them like a disease he planned to cure. "These humans are clever," L told his officers. "But cleverness only goes so far against overwhelming force. We will break them, not through quick victory, but through attrition. We will grind them down until there's nothing left to fight with." He was right to be concerned. Humanity was running out of resources. Every battle cost ships they couldn't replace. Every soldier who died was one less fighter for the next battle. Lieutenant Shin had lost half her pilots. Commander's submarine fleet was down to 3 operational vessels. Sergeant Bay was creating explosives from salvaged parts because they had run out of proper materials. Dr. Han worked in medical bays that were always full. She performed miracles daily, keeping wounded soldiers alive with equipment that should have been replaced years ago. But even miracles had limits. She was losing people she couldn't save, and each death weighed on her like a stone. "We can't keep this up forever," she told Wu during one of his rare visits to the medical bay. "We're running out of medicine, out of equipment, out of everything. I'm using supplies meant for minor injuries to treat major trauma. People are dying who shouldn't be dying." Wu had no answer. He just nodded and moved on to the next crisis. Command was a lonely place. Every decision he made sent people to their deaths. Every strategy was a gamble with lives as the stakes. Sometimes he wondered if they should have just surrendered at the start. Then he would remember why they were fighting, and the doubt would fade. Colonel Menu had stopped talking about the future. He focused only on the present, on the next battle, the next objective. His soldiers noticed he was moving slower, breathing harder. The sickness that had been eating at him for years was winning, but he refused to stop fighting. "I'm already dead," he told during a planning session. "Cancer, stage 4. Doctors gave me 6 months, and that was 8 months ago. So every day I'm still here is a bonus. Might as well spend it making these aliens regret ever hearing about Earth." Didn't know what to say. Minu had been his mentor during the resource wars, had taught him everything about guerrilla warfare. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" "Because it doesn't matter, we all die eventually. The question is what we do before that happens." Minu smiled, a rare expression that made his face look almost peaceful. "I'm going to die fighting. That's better than dying in a hospital bed waiting for the end." The war evolved in ways neither side had predicted. Humans began capturing technology and reverse engineering it with frightening speed. What took the aliens centuries to develop, humans adapted in months. Desperation made them creative. Commander Lee, who had spent the war balancing diplomacy with military action, finally achieved a breakthrough. She convinced 3 council species to formally object to this campaign. It wasn't much, but it was something. The galaxy was starting to notice that humanity refused to die quietly. "The council won't intervene militarily," she reported. "But they're putting pressure on the trade sanctions, diplomatic isolation. It won't stop the war, but it might limit how far they're willing to go." They responded by committing more forces. L was determined to end the war before political pressure forced a retreat. He gathered every ship under his command and prepared for one final, overwhelming assault, not on Mars or the colonies, but on Earth itself. "If we take there, the resistance collapses," he announced. "No species can continue fighting once their birthplace is conquered. We will strike at Earth with everything we have. Total annihilation if they resist. Complete submission or complete destruction." News of the coming assault spread quickly. General Song looked at the tactical projections and felt cold. They were bringing their entire armada, over 1,000 ships. Humanity had maybe 100 combat-capable vessels left, most of them damaged. "We can't win this," she told her officers bluntly. "Not in a straight fight. They outnumber us 10 to 1. Their ships are better. Their weapons are stronger. If we meet them in open battle, we'll be destroyed in hours." "Then we don't fight fair," Minu said. He was in a wheelchair now, too weak to stand for long, but his mind was sharp as ever. "We turn Earth into the biggest trap in human history. Every city, every military base, every installation. We make them fight for every meter. We make the cost so high they'll wish they had never come." Wu looked at his exhausted, battered, dying army. These people had given everything for humanity's freedom. They had fought longer and harder than anyone had thought possible, and now they were being asked to make one final stand. "All units prepare to fall back to Earth," he ordered. "This is it. The final battle. We win here or we lose everything. Make sure you're ready. Make sure your people are ready. Because when that fleet arrives, there's no retreat, no surrender. We fight until we win or until there's nobody left to fight." The long war was about to become the last war, and Earth would be its battlefield. The Armada arrived at Earth like a storm made of metal and fire. Over 1,000 warships filled the sky, blotting out the stars. On the ground, in cities across the planet, humans looked up and saw their doom approaching. Some prayed, some cried, some just waited. But the veterans didn't wait, they prepared. Captain Wu Park stood in the ruins of Seoul, now converted into a massive military fortress. Every building was a bunker. Every street was a kill zone. Every underground tunnel held soldiers ready to fight. Around the world, other cities had done the same. Earth had become one giant trap. "They're here," General Song's voice crackled over the comm. May whatever gods exist have mercy on us all. Commander L looked down at Earth from his flagship and felt satisfaction. This would be the end. One overwhelming strike and humanity would break. Begin orbital bombardment. Target their military installations. Show them the price of resistance. Energy beams lanced down from orbit, striking military bases and fortifications. Explosions bloomed across the planet's surface. Buildings that had stood for centuries vanished in seconds. The display of power was meant to break human morale. It did the opposite. All units, this is command, Wu said calmly into the comm system. They're firing on our home. They're trying to scare us. Don't let them. Remember why we fight. Remember everyone we've lost. Remember that we're humans and we don't quit. Lieutenant Shin launched from a hidden airfield with what remained of her squadron. 12 fighters against 1,000 warships. The odds were insane. She didn't care. She had learned to embrace the insanity months ago. Target their command ship, she ordered. If we're going down, we're taking that bastard L with us. Her fighters screamed through the atmosphere, dodging debris and energy beams. Half were destroyed before they reached orbit. Kept going. She had survived this long by being too stubborn to die. Today would be no different. Colonel Minyu watched from his wheelchair as landing craft descended toward Seoul. He was dying. The cancer had spread to his lungs, his liver, his bones. Every breath was pain, but he had saved just enough strength for this final act. He said into his comm, "You ready?" Sergeant Bay sat in a bunker beneath the city, surrounded by detonators connected to explosives planted throughout Seoul. "Ready when you are, sir." "Then let's show these aliens what happens when you attack our home." The landing craft touched down in what appeared to be the city center. Soldiers poured out expecting resistance. They found empty streets, silent buildings. It felt wrong, familiar somehow. Their training warned them about traps. The warning came too late. Minyu gave the signal, pressed the detonators. Seoul exploded. Not all at once, but in a carefully choreographed sequence designed to maximize casualties. Buildings collapsed onto landing zones. Underground charges turned streets into craters. The shaped explosives had spent months building tore through armor like paper. In the chaos, human fighters emerged from tunnels and bunkers. They fought at close range where the aliens' superior technology meant less. Major led a team directly into the enemy's temporary headquarters, killing officers and destroying communication equipment. It was brutal, savage, effective. "They fight like animals," an officer screamed as humans overwhelmed his position. "No," Minyu said quietly, pulling himself from his wheelchair to fire at approaching enemies. "We fight like humans. There's a difference." In space, remaining fighters reached the flagship. She could see Commander's last submarine emerging from behind the moon, firing missiles at the enemy fleet. She could see humanity's warships, outnumbered 50-1, charging into battle anyway. "For Earth!" she screamed, and her squadron dove toward the flagship. L watched in horror as everything went wrong at once. His landing forces were being slaughtered in urban combat. His fleet was under attack from enemies that appeared from nowhere. These humans refused to fight the way they were supposed to fight. They didn't line up in formation. They didn't respect battlefield conventions. They just kept coming, kept dying, kept fighting. "Sir, we're losing too many ships," his tactical officer reported. "Casualty projections they're catastrophic." Commander Lee, who had spent the war trying to find a diplomatic solution, made her final play. She broadcast a message to the entire Galactic Council, showing footage of the battle, Earth burning, humans dying, but also humans fighting, refusing to surrender even in the face of certain death. "This is what they call pacification," she said. "This is what happens when you try to break the human spirit. We're not asking for help. We're showing you what we are, what we've always been, a species that survives because we refuse to accept death." The broadcast reached millions of alien viewers across the galaxy. Some were horrified. Some were impressed. Some began to question whether conquering humanity was worth the cost. Minyu died holding a rifle surrounded by dead enemies. His last words were, "We showed them. They'll remember." Died when his bunker took a direct hit from orbit. His explosives kept going off for hours afterward. Went down with his ship after ramming it into a cruiser at full speed. But they took hundreds of aliens with them, maybe thousands, and their sacrifice bought time. Managed to destroy the flagship's main weapons before being shot down. She ejected again, tumbling through space in her damaged pod. This time, she wasn't sure if anyone would find her. She didn't care. She had done her part. Wu fought in Seoul's ruins until he ran out of ammunition. Then he fought with a knife, then with his bare hands. When reinforcements finally found him, he was covered in blood, both human and alien, barely conscious but still fighting. Dr. Han refused to evacuate her medical station even as the battle raged around her. She stayed with her patients, treating wounds until the last moment. When a squad broke into her facility, she stood between them and her patients, unarmed but unafraid. The squad commander looked at this small human woman defying him. Something in her eyes made him pause. Later, he would report that she looked at him not with fear but with pity, as if she felt sorry for him. He ordered his troops to move on without harming the medical station. It was the first act of mercy in the entire battle. The fighting lasted 3 days. By the end, they had lost 70% of their fleet. Their landing forces were decimated. L's flagship was destroyed. The few surviving ships retreated in disorder. Humanity had lost more. Cities were in ruins. Millions were dead. Their military was shattered, but they had won. They had survived. Commander Lee received a message from the Galactic Council. They were being ordered to withdraw immediately and enter peace negotiations. Several council species had threatened to intervene if the war continued. Earth was granted full sovereignty. All colonies were returned. Humanity would join the Galactic Council as an equal member. But the price had been terrible. Wu stood in the ruins of Seoul, looking at the memorial wall being built for the fallen. So many names. Minyu. Thousands of others who had given everything for humanity's freedom. Was it worth it? General Song asked, standing beside him. Ask me in 100 years, Wu replied. Ask our if living free was worth the price their ancestors paid. Was rescued 2 days after the battle ended. She would never fly combat missions again. Her injuries were too severe. But she lived to tell the story. Survived and established the first trauma center shared between humans and aliens. She taught other species what she had learned in Earth's wars. Some of them couldn't handle the knowledge. Humans had fought so brutally, so desperately, that it changed how the galaxy viewed them. 10 years later, when a new threat emerged to challenge the Galactic Council, the first call for help went to Earth. The Council needed soldiers who knew how to fight against impossible odds. Wu, now truly retired, looked at the request. His body ached, his scars hurt, he was tired of war. But when his old team contacted him, he knew what his answer would be. I guess retirement will have to wait, he said, smiling. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Humans were not the strongest species. They were not the or the most advanced, but they were the most stubborn, the most determined, the most willing to sacrifice everything for freedom. They had thought humans were weak. They learned otherwise, and they would never forget.